Hey everyone, welcome to the Underswell. I'm Derek Sabori. Thanks for being here. All right. Steve Richardson, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Derek. Great to be here.
Yeah, man, we're live on the channels. We're live on LinkedIn, and we're live here. You're dialing in from Oregon, from Beaverton, right? Is that where are you at right now, Steve?
I am. I'm at Nike World Headquarters in Beaverton. I'm in one of our many conference rooms here, enjoying our beautiful view and sunny day here in Beaverton.
That's so great, and a great view. It looks like there's a nice view outside. It looks like a beautiful day up there. I want to dive in and get a little sense of what you're doing up there, because I think that's a new project for you. But let's maybe give a little context for everybody. I want to talk about how we first met, because Steve, it's been a minute, right? I think we met back in 2012, and if reverse the tables, like you were doing some work for me back then, right? You were just coming out on your own.
Yeah, exactly. So I had left Patagonia after a really great run there, leading the materials development team, and you were at Volcom just starting the EP&L project, environmental profit and loss project, which was kind of a very early effort at quantifying the overall life cycle impacts and assigning a monetary value to those.
Yeah, and for context too, I was like, I don't even know where to start with this. Kering had some consultants that they had brought in, which was great. So we got a little bit of training. I'm like, there's no way, I need to get some help. And then I found you.
Yeah, but you gave me the opportunity to really, help you with that project, dive in deep to what, some of the real impacts are of our processes and materials, and also really start my consulting business. You were my first client and still one of my best.
So cool. Yeah, I look back at that and just, it's so nice to still have a relationship. You and I touch base every now and then. We've shared an office, for a while. I almost got to do some work for you. And so it's just been fun kind of watching it evolve. And your career, Steve, has been sort of this evolution. You've been at so many great brands. You've lived and worked abroad. I do want to ask, though, a little bit, because you've been in sustainability for so long, things have changed, especially since that first 2012 interaction that we had. How, in your mind, just kind of quickly, how has the space changed? What have you seen when it comes to, professional sustainability work?
Yeah, so I'd argue it hasn't changed at all, and that change and dynamic evolution is inherently a part of sustainability. The only thing that we know is that we're always learning more, and we're always evolving new things as we do learn more. So, and it's funny. I think I can think back, and I'm like, man, I've argued on both sides of the coin for some of these issues. I've developed amazing water repellent garments, and then I've really campaigned against fluorochemicals. I've helped companies purchase a significant amount of animal-based products and down, and then I've also really helped implement strategies and standards around animal welfare and responsible, animal farming practices and things. So, like the only thing I think the constant in sustainability is change. We're always learning more. We're always evolving. I think that's a beautiful thing, and it's a journey that we're all on together.
Yeah, I love that you said that, and it's interesting because I just gave a talk with a client. So I was doing some work with ASICS, and they've had me for an Earth Day talk, an Earth Month, talk for the last few years. And today, a lot of it was about just sort of the evolution of it all, how it's changed, where we've been, where we're going. And one of the things that I'm always saying is it has changed a lot, but I really like your perspective. It's like, but that is the nature of it. Like it's changing, but it's not changing because that's what it's supposed to do, essentially. It's like, where were you a couple hours ago? I could have really used that.
Yeah, and I feel like to be, to have been in sustainability a long time, you're going to have seen a lot of things, and I feel like there's, the experts in sustainability are flexible, transparent, willing to have a discussion and be vulnerable and say, I don't know. Those are that curiosity and those are great qualities to have in this work, because it's there's not rigid rules, And, like I said, the playing field's always changing.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about, you're doing some contract work for Nike now. So one more big name on your resume, if you will. Give me a little background on how this project came about, and maybe what some of the work, describe some of the work that you're doing over there.
Yeah. So, this work came up in kind of an unusual way. I found myself out of work in November last year, shortly after the election. And, I think a lot of people have felt the impacts of some of the new administration policies. My role and my whole team at my last role got eliminated because of some of the DEI rollback, that we've seen go on. And it was an indirect effect where, some of the key customers of that company stopped requiring the information. So the company said, we don't need the information. Wow. And it happened fairly quickly. And, certainly I'm very grateful and fortunate I'm in a good place to weather that kind of storm. And my heart goes out to people that aren't in such a good place. I know there's a lot of government workers out there now that are struggling. And I grew up in Washington, D.C. area, so I certainly know what that's about and can only imagine what a lot of those folks are going through. Yeah. And certainly in my network of sustainability people, there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of questions, there's a lot of unknowing. So I really took the opportunity in this career change career shift to look in and take some time to really ground myself. I brought on some new self-care tools that I hadn't had before because I kind of felt like I needed them. Took care of a little internal cabinet cleaning and
yeah, such as can you share a couple of them?
Sure. So I took care of my health a little bit better than I have. I hadn't seen the doctor in a while, and I needed to get a little bit of tune up there. I had a little bit of high blood pressure, and it was time to work on that. We were fortunate in Central Oregon, and we had just an amazing ski season, and we still are, and so I really enjoyed that. And I also worked on kind of deepening my practices around meditation, journaling, some of my mindfulness practices, and really took the opportunity to dive into those a little deeper. Found a great new meditation app I really like, and also I'm trying to deepen my practice to where I don't need apps anymore.
Yeah. Hopefully all of this stays. Now the trick will be keeping this through the next iteration of your journey here, right?
Well, yeah, and I certainly feel that. So I'll tell you more about this role in a minute. But I started this about a month ago, and it's been a real challenge to keep those tools. Like self-care kind of can become a full-time gig when you're between jobs.
Yeah. You're like, oh, this is good. This is the way to live.
Yeah, it's a wonderful way to live, but it probably doesn't mash up with that need to generate income and be a part of a workplace or society. So yeah, it's and I think there's real magic in finding ways to integrate that self-care into your work life and find that balance.
Yeah. So back to I wish you the best on that. I mean, it's something that I've really incorporated into my life as well. And it takes up a big chunk of my morning. My spot is like my morning, start with a walk, do some meditation, do some breathing work, some breath work, do some stretching. But when you make it a priority, it's like all of a sudden you're like, man, don't tell anybody. I can't tell anybody how long I've been working on myself here every day, but it's important. And I think it's important for the longevity of our careers and our health, right?
Absolutely. And, I know like a lot of your audience is people either finding their way in their careers or looking for new directions. And it's counterintuitive because, self-care is not gonna hit your bank account, but it is going to help you get there. It is going to create this foundation that you can use to really find your way and in a very authentic and genuine and curious way. And it's made the search just a wonderful journey, and feel really fortunate for that.
That's great to hear. Yeah. So, well, no matter what, you did something right because it helped land you this gig. You're doing some materials work, which is kind of the sweet spot for what you like to work on. I'm wondering how you maybe touching on that and expanding on it a little bit as well, but also just like what led you to sustainability and climate work in the first place? Because if I look back, that wasn't always or at least early on, I think your degree was in international relations and affairs. Yep. But how'd you get into materials? How'd you get into this space? What led you here, Steve?
Yeah, huge question, right? So yeah, I studied international relations. I grew up in the DC area. I really thought I wanted to be a diplomat, and I wanted to work for the State Department. I joke that I learned enough at James Madison that I realized I didn't want to work in DC and be a part of the State Department. I'd fallen in love with mountain biking and skiing in the outdoors, and I was really drawn to the big spaces out west. And so I kind of quickly, found ways to follow my passions and move west. And I always knew I loved working in outdoor shops. I loved outdoor gear. I loved performance and product, and the late 80s, mid to early 90s were like a wonderful time in product technology and evolution. We still had paper catalogs that told us all these great stories and promised us, these grand adventures if we just, had the right gear. And even if we didn't have the right gear, it didn't feel like the marketing was so tied to like buying things, but it was more like to your knowledge and your real expertise as an outdoors person. Yeah. And I was really drawn to that. And I'd always had this curious nature, and I wanted to know, how things were made, what they were made from. And I was really fortunate to find opportunities that allowed me to pursue those questions. And I started off working in the bicycle industry and on the race circuit, and it was really fun to engage with some of the best athletes in the world and to help them have some of their best days ever. And I also kind of realized through that I didn't want to travel 8 months of the year. So I took an opportunity to go to Oakley at a time when they were really like they had just gone public. They'd just done their IPO, and unfortunately I missed that. Financially.
Just by days.
Yeah. No, but I missed it by a couple of years, so it wasn't that close. But they had a job opening in their testing lab, and I thought testing was great, and they gave me the ability to learn and explore and really dive deep into materials, product performance, quality testing, performance testing, R&D work. And that really opened up a lot of doors for me that I knew I had this intrinsic passion for and was really drawn to. So,
Steve, were you doing, if I can interrupt real quick, were you doing like field testing, or were you more on like the science testing of, durability and running it through, like working in the lab, or a little bit of a mix of both?
It was a mix of both. We were working with our athletes on field testing and how to do that, how to gather data from it and use that. We were working with our products on how to test them. We were working with test methods and modifying test methods to make them work for us, because a lot of times the standard test method wasn't enough for Oakley product. We were designing eyewear, especially that was kind of beyond some of the normal tests, and so we were designing new tests. And then I was asked to, as Oakley started to grow, the different product lines came around, and I was asked to kind of pick a lane. And I was fortunate enough to be able to choose to focus on apparel and textiles.
Oh, cool.
And we were also doing footwear, so it was textiles for footwear and apparel. And that involved actually asking questions like, what are the right test methods? How should we evaluate, everything from tear strength to pilling to breathability for outdoor wear, and understanding what those test methods were, bringing them in, getting the right equipment, staffing up the lab, all that stuff, and really building this very cool, part of Oakley where the company was really based around performance, test results, and using those to market and sell products. So it was a really amazing foundation, and I'm so grateful to Oakley for that time.
Yeah, but that still wasn't necessarily sustainability, climate-related work, right? Was it the from there you get to Patagonia. Is Patagonia then where you sort of where that seed gets planted and you're like, there's kind of a name for this. This is what I want to do. What was your aha moment, if you will?
And you're right. At Oakley, everything was about performance. It, it was about efficiency, but it was not. There wasn't a focus at that time on sustainability. And being an outdoors enthusiast and having worked in outdoor retailers, and I really had a passion for Patagonia and a great appreciation for their quality and what they were doing. But again, from really a performance side, I wasn't so tuned into that environmental mission yet. I had the opportunity I took the opportunity to apply for a couple of roles there, and I didn't get them at first, and they were all around materials and materials testing and development. I didn't get the first role I applied for, but then I applied again to a new role, and I got that.
Nice.
And as soon as I got to Ventura, it was like, okay, this is all about sustainability.
Did you feel like you had some catching up to do or some learning?
I was like, whoa, what is this? So there was a big learning curve there, but I also feel like I came there with a curious mind and the ability and the willingness, the humility maybe to ask, why are we doing this? So, for instance, at the time we were really going down this road of a big project towards chemically recycled polyester and nylon, and there were huge investment asks, huge, very little real data on what this was going to yield or where this was going to go, and huge time commitments in terms of collecting garments, shipping garments around, waiting for them to be processed, and then see what we might get out of it. And I kind of had I don't want to say we killed that project, but we kind of had to take our foot off the gas of it and really then focus on things that we could achieve and have greater impacts with. It was a really cool project. It was a great idea in theory, but the reality in the perspective of seasonal development, what we could bring to market in a reasonable time and at a reasonable cost just wasn't there. So I think I put some of that performance business lens onto sustainability and really helped us kind of focus on okay, that might be the North Star. We want to get there someday, but right now we can really expand what we're doing with mechanically recycled polyester and expanding the yarn selections there so that we can get something that feels good and that replicates the what we can get out of virgin polyester today. And that's a much more achievable, scalable, business case based decision than the chemically recycled stuff was at the time.
Well, while you were there, it sounds like you got a real master class. I mean, obviously Patagonia is the company that we look to say, how do you do it right? How do you commit to sustainability? How do you make sure it's embedded in the organization? How do you make sure it comes from the top, that everybody's working on it, but that we're blending it with business and making smart decisions? So you really got that killer training there and that pedigree, and you take that and you parlay that to take a big leap. You go on your own first for a while, and then you go to Germany and take the role at Adidas. How'd that play out?
Correct. And I wouldn't say, Derek, that it was a master class there. It was just a master collaboration, and all the folks there it's a joy to know Yvonne and Melinda Chenard, certainly, but the folks that we know, Jill DeMaine, Todd Copeland, Damian Wong, Tetsuya Ohara, the collaborative efforts that we went through, Tim Bantle, the collaborative efforts that we all joined in together, the inspiration from designers like Courtney Morgan, Eric Rice, John Rapp, when you work with these people, you're just really able to collaborate and evolve sustainability beyond what we could read in books or, take classes on. So it was a really cool effort, and I really felt like we were all on the front lines of that.
Yeah, no, good reminder. And it's just, you mentioned all those names, and it's like legends in our space, and it's like, man, you guys were working on it so early on, and it really has, kind of been such a catalyst, I think, for the rest of the industry. So what a fun opportunity to be a part of that. But where does that lead to then? Your work there, what comes next?
Yeah, so I did the work with Volcom, did some consulting work, and we were traveling. We were actually on a bit of a family trip. We were seeing some family in Norway, And I'd seen this role come up at Adidas in Germany, and I thought, I've always wanted to live abroad. And Adidas, I think, is a cool company. I got to be careful what I say around here.
Yeah.
So I'd applied for this role, but I thought, I don't know whatever's going to come from it. And I'm pretty happy with the way life is working today anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt like I needed to take, just to try things and throw myself out there. So literally while we're on this trip in Norway, Adidas called and said, we'd really like to talk to you. And would you be, able to, what would it take to get you, over here to Germany for a conversation? I said, well, actually, I'm in Norway for the next 10 days. And,
wow, what a coincidence, huh?
And I said, it's a pretty relaxed agenda here. We don't have a really tight time frame. I said, I if you guys could make it happen, I'd be happy to come down, and it'd be ideal if my family could come with me. So they actually flew us all down.
So nice.
And rerouted our trip back to the States.
Jeez.
And I interviewed, and it went well. And kind of by the time we got back home, they'd sent me an offer, and it was cool that we all got to experience what it was like there firsthand and see the town, see the campus, see what was going on in that part of Germany, and we all felt really good about it. So we pulled the trigger and took the leap and came over to Germany for a few years.
Wow, what a great opportunity, and so many good. I mean, you look at your LinkedIn bio or your resume, and it's like, what Adidas, and then to Tesla or Chroma, working with the team at Unless and Fox Factory. It's like great hit list, of name brands on your resume. Now doing this work with Nike, but Steve, you've been in-house and, contract off and on. You've had your own, consulting business. What are some of the pros and cons to each, and what sort of have you come to appreciate about either one, and which one do you like better if you had to pick?
Gosh, I feel fortunate because I feel like I've been able to work with great brands at great times in their evolution. So, timing is important, and I find that the place I really enjoy engaging, working with brands, is in the middle of a steep growth period, like where things are really, really happening, where the company's growing, it's chaotic, it's, we're bolting the wheels on while we're racing, we're trying to make more stuff, and grow the business and grow what we're doing. But to me, that's a really wonderful time to be with the company, and I've been fortunate to be there a few times.
Yeah.
I to be honest, Eric, I could not pick a favorite. Certainly some have been better work environments than others. Tesla was a difficult work environment personally, although professionally it was a fantastic place to be. And I think I don't know, we're kind of, everybody's kind of seeing that play out now. By the way, we're all seeing Elon's management style firsthand. And
were you surprised?
Not a bit.
Okay, yeah.
And it was kind of relieving for me because people would ask about my experience at Tesla, and they're like, what was it like? And I was like,
it must have been so awesome.
Well, I was always like, it was great. It was amazing. Professionally, I learned more than I've learned I was there for 20 months, and I learned more in that 20 months than I've learned in years at other places.
Wow.
So, and professionally, it was super rewarding work. I had a lot of autonomy and a lot of ability to really do things I felt like needed to be done, and I enjoyed that. But personally, it was a real challenge. It was a very competitive work environment, and it felt like it always felt like you were on some kind of unknown mission with a blindfold on, and that could get exhausting. Yeah,
and I bet, man, with each of these significant names and these companies, with each of your experiences, you're mentioning a few of them, but I'm sure there have been significant takeaways from each of them, just like you explained here with Tesla. Has there been sort of a common thread that you've seen through each of them, or anything that sort of stands out collectively if you had to sort of pick and choose from the impactful experiences? I almost imagine you writing a book, Steve, with like each chapter is one of these different companies, because there's probably so much, like you said, that you learned from each of them.
It'd be fun. Yeah, and I think so. The common thread is that I find is that at great brands like these, that working there is really similar to kind of the the type of consumer they cater to. So Oakley, for instance, very action sports oriented, solo sports like surfing, motocross, mountain biking, and it kind of had that vibe to it, high energy, a little bit of like solo work, but also this kind of coming together around events and celebrating that. Adidas, very team focused. Everything had to be collaborative. You had to bind on to your colleagues and really go through, scrum through things together like you would in a rugby game.
Okay.
And it was very team focused. Patagonia, again, very sustainable, outdoorsy, but a little think about climbing, surfing, like there's a little solo aspect to some of those sports, and kind of make your own way and be an entrepreneur was important there. Invent things, invent new ways to do these kind of, minimalist sports, sports where you do it without a lot of gear.
Yeah.
So, the working experience, I think, is really reflective of what the brand represents. Yeah,
it's interesting to look at it that way and hear that.
I wonder, when I'm looking at companies or new opportunities, I think about what the brand represents, and and that could be true not just for like an outdoors brand, but like a pharmaceutical brand or a food brand, like I think whatever you see in the products and the way the kind of consumers the brand tries to bring in is probably how it's going to be working there.
Yeah, that's interesting. That makes me think of how, my time at Volcom, of just how we portrayed ourselves on the outside was often, as professional as it could be, was often a bit of how what the working style was like on the inside, so you're always trying to balance the image that you have and how you're showing up for your customers, but at the same time, keep your business strong and run it. So yeah, it's really interesting. Steve, I look at your resume and, it looks, and I would say, hey, that's a successful career that's been built, still going, you're still building it, you're still doing it. So I've got, sort of on both sides of the coin. What would you say were some of the factors to help you with that success, from DC to, was it college? Was it your parents that prepped you? Was it just your resilience or foresight? Were you intentional in building this all? And maybe were there some stumbles and failures along the way that you really have been memorable?
Yeah, certainly. I'll try to start with the first part there. So,
all right.
I think what set me up for success was almost a willingness to learn and an appreciation of like the value of lifelong learning. I am a generalist. I have broad knowledge about a lot of things. I value that. I also value deep expertise. There's a place for that, but I also it's not what I bring, and it's not what I'm passionate about.
We are brothers in that light. That's to say, right? It's like there's a place for that, but just not in my brain. It's like there's a place for that, but just somewhere else. That's funny.
And I also think I've been willing to think broadly about work, and I'm not attached to a lane. So my career path looks kind of like a mountain road versus a straight line, and I'm very okay with that. Some cultures don't celebrate that. I'm really okay with that.
It's been a theme in my talk. So this nonlinear career that many people have, especially once you look back. And I wonder, have you seen it serve you well at any point? Because I know you're saying you're happy with it, but at any point, it doesn't seem like it's been a hindrance. Nobody said, well, you spent a little time in outdoor and you were over here and then you went to automotive and then you were in chemicals. I'm not sure. It seems like it's been a benefit for you though, right?
Oh, I absolutely think so. And in this job environment, I think it's absolutely critical here in the U.S. and North America to be flexible and open to opportunities that, you may not expect, or, different levels in the company where, you may be working up, you may be working down. I'd be open to any work, and it was really important in this search. I mean, I was open to full-time W-2 employment. I was open to consulting work. I was even considering buying a local business in Bend, Oregon, where I live. I was looking under all the rocks and looking for any opportunity. And it was a great journey. And I think that's important in this kind of job market, is to appreciate and enjoy the journey, because it's probably not going to be something that you do that you're over with in a couple weeks or a month like it used to be.
Yeah, that's right. Well, let's touch on, how about any of those failures or learnings, as we like to call them. We don't like to call them failures. What have you learned from?
I mean, I've certainly had challenges. I've been through a few layoffs. I've been through a few difficult separations with work. I've been through some times where I realized work was compromising my personal values or hurting people that were important to me in my life. That the work was it wasn't aligning with who I wanted to be and show up as. And those are tough times. Those are really, especially when you're working for companies that you believe in, that you value, that other people see and are like, that must be amazing, and you're not having a great experience. That's tough, but I think it's important to be true to yourself.
Right. Steve, how do you bounce back from those? You mentioned the separations, a couple layoffs, like that's tough. What advice do you have for bouncing back when that happens? Especially when somebody like you too, you're like, wait, hang on, you're letting me go? How? Right? You're just like,
yeah.
How's
well,
that?
It is a process, Derek.
Yeah.
I mean, it hasn't all been healthy. Sometimes it's been going out for some drinks and, screaming at the moon and expressing some of that frustration and that energy. It's involved some therapy. It's involved some personal growth. It's involved finding those self-care tools. But man, I'm grateful for all the experiences, because even if they've hurt or left a mark, I've become better for it. And I am more comfortable in my own skin as an employee, as a person, and I like the way I'm showing up today better and better.
I'm glad to hear that. Let's give some advice, Steve, to maybe people who are interested in, either that outdoor space, sustainability space, technology. How does somebody build a resume like yours and work with brands like this? Or motorsports. I mean, you've had your hands on a whole bunch of different things. So for somebody who's like, ooh, that looks great, I want to do that, what advice do you have for people?
Yeah, I'd say, be willing to learn, be curious, be flexible. There's a lot of, it's really cool to see now there's so many programs out there in sustainability. There's so many programs in outdoor product or action sports focused product. There's avenues into these type of jobs that weren't there, where you can really acquire some skills. Even if you do that, even if you acquire some deep knowledge in a certain area, still think it's really important to be flexible and see how you can apply that broadly.
Yeah.
And think about who you want to show up as in that role and what you want to bring.
I like that. What do you get the sense from in sustainability? I know in your LinkedIn bio, you say you're a climate optimist. But you're in this space, you're doing this work. What is the sense that you get? Sort of what's the vibe? If we did a pulse check for companies, brands that they in the space on sustainability, climate action, are you feeling like it's still important to companies and brands and they're all in? I know this is totally loaded, wide open, and it depends, but I just want to get your sense of what are you feeling and seeing out there from companies, brands? What are you hearing? What's your, with your ear to the ground out there?
Yeah, I know you said you had an event, but did Earth Day happen this year? I didn't hear much about it.
Yeah, right.
It was probably the quietest Earth Day I've ever experienced, which, in some ways I'm like, okay, Earth Day should be quiet, reflect nature,
Yes.
all that. But it was very, very quiet this year. And I do think we're moving into a period where companies, people are really focusing in. There's a lot of economic stress. It's there's a lot of reasons for this, and I think that sustainability is going to default back to what's been regulated. And luckily, a lot of things have been regulated. We have a lot more regulation laws out there than we used to have, and they're going to help us move forward. They're beyond U.S. federal laws, so I feel like California state laws, Washington state laws, Oregon state laws, Maine state laws are all going to really help move it forward. And Europe is still charging forward with all their initiatives. So anybody wanting to do business with Europe or is probably going to have to really consider those things. I do believe, I believe the work is real. I believe it's necessary. I believe there's value in it for business, for the planet, for people and communities. I think it'll come back full steam and stronger than it's ever been. I just think we're going to go through a period of internal grounding and focus and probably build a foundation to come back stronger.
Maybe a little bit of quiet time, just like this Earth Day, right? Yep. Steve, I'd like to talk about kind of young professionals kind of building up their careers in the last few minutes here. I want to shift to that. You've got young kids, not adults now, going through college and preparing for themselves for their career journeys. But I do wonder, I'm trying to get a sense from my audience, how important was your college experience? I know you're a UC parent. You don't have a graduate yet, do you?
I do. Graduate? I have a graduate from UC Berkeley.
That's right.
My oldest graduated in May, and she's planning to go to Pepperdine Law.
So awesome.
So super happy for her. And my youngest is at UC Santa Cruz.
Cruz, that's right.
I think I'll give a plug. I mean, I think the UC system from a parent's perspective is the best value in education, bar none.
Yeah. I agree with you. I'm as a UC alum myself, and then one of my kids is about to embark on that journey. So I think from that, you've kind of answered the question. You see value in it, but I guess also, what do you hear out there? What advice did you give to your kids as they were heading into college? And are you hearing anything else aside from, well, of course you should go to college?
Yeah. So I mean, when I went to school, I was very fortunate to get into James Madison, fantastic school back in Virginia. And I studied international affairs. My parents actually encouraged me to study liberal arts. I was kind of wanting something more technical, more maybe engineering focused, but I also didn't want to transfer out. And at the time, Madison didn't have engineering or technical programs. Frankly, Derek, I'm really happy I studied liberal arts. International affairs was a great foundation for materials work because it's all about, diplomacy and that could be diplomacy at the government level or in the supply chain. Yeah. So it applies really well. I think what's really valuable at a foundation in liberal arts, even if you are a really technically minded person, is that ability to think critically, to write, to listen, to read, to understand, some of those, I'll call them softer dynamics or more interpersonal dynamics that you get with a liberal arts education. So, I'm really, really grateful for that. I also understand that's not right for everybody. And, and I encouraged my kids to choose their own path and just gave nothing but unconditional support for that. And still do, Yeah. I can. I mean, we like to say that, but as parents, we all kind of get activated sometimes.
And we have our biases where it's like, I want to let you choose. You do your own thing. But I think I only know how to speak in terms of advice and opinions at this point. But I'm doing my best.
Absolutely. And we all are,
Yeah. Is there anything about young people, young professionals, if anything, that I guess worries you or that intrigues and excites you, when you see young people coming into the space? We've been at this for a little while. We're seeing young people. We're working alongside younger people now. What's your takeaway?
I think it's got to be so fascinating to have grown up in the information age where you have all this access to information. And, you don't just have to comb through, like paper catalogs anymore to get information. The knowledge is out there. So yeah. I think the challenge and what I wonder is how do you differentiate yourself? Because a lot of what we came up with through the career ranks was knowledge or better knowledge.
Yeah.
Now it's maybe more of what do you do with that knowledge? What do you bring with it? And how do you present it? How do you use it and engage that to move yourself and move things forward?
Really interesting point. So with that, if I kind of had to ask for, I guess sort of these three things, to keep in mind, or maybe I've already asked you had some great advice, but I think, in terms of, building that career in this age of information, are there things that you want people to remember and know as they build their career and come into the workspace and try to catch up to you or work alongside you? What do they need to keep in mind as they're developing their careers?
I think we underestimate the power of relationships and networks to get work really done.
Yeah.
I think we felt that with that rapid transition to Zoom meetings and virtual interactions, and then the slow kind of move back to in real life, in-person work, and the value of that is just so important. And there's nothing more important than a strong relationship to move things forward in business. So take the time to have a coffee, take the time to enjoy lunch with people, set up in-person meetings, resist the urge to just be on your screens and computers all the time, and close the doggone things when you're in real meetings. Enjoy the time to be together, and don't multitask and feel like you got to take notes and type. You're going to retain what you need to retain.
Yeah. So be present. Back to your meditation, back to our mindfulness. Be present in the moment and be there, enjoy it, and make that connection with people. I think that's really good advice. I really, that idea of differentiating yourself, it really resonates with me. And I think that's going to be something good to leave with people. Steve, what's next for you? Let's wrap it up here. But what's next out on the horizon for you? And I like to give sort of an opportunity here just for a last, like a shout out or a call out, I call it, where you can either really kind of call somebody out or something out, or just be like, you know what, I got to shout out to these people, this thing. So what's next? And the soapbox is yours.
I'm enjoying this opportunity that I'm doing now. It's a great experience, and I really enjoy working for a consulting firm. I'd encourage people to try that. Personally, I'm also really I'm partway down the road, and I'm going to keep going towards being a Pilates instructor. And that's the shout out I'd give is if you haven't tried Pilates as part of your self-care routine, give it a shot. It's an amazing workout and an amazing change your body and change your life is kind of how it's been for me.
Yeah.
So I'm working towards being a Pilates instructor. And I really like that. It taps into some of my lifelong learning desire, my enjoyment of helping others and being kind of that educator. So just continue the exploration you're on and enjoy the ride.
So cool. Well, Steve, enjoy the ride out there and this contract that you've got, this work that you're going to be doing. I know it's going to be impactful. People are going to appreciate it. So thanks so much for sharing insights and advice with us. And thanks for just being a friend. And it's been really fun, that we just feels like every 6 to 8 months, maybe at the most, like, oh, there's Steve. Like, let's stay connected. And so I'm really grateful for that. And it's been really fun to watch you do your thing. So.
Me too. And coming up to Bend and snowboard sometime. It's a good time.
Let's do it. That sounds awesome. All right, Steve. Well, I'll let you get back to work. Thanks so much. And we'll talk to you later.
Thank you, my friend. Have a great day.
You too. Hey, everyone. Thanks for checking out the show. If you like what you heard, be sure to check back weekly, subscribe to the show. And if you want to be featured on the show, come hit us up at theunderswell.com. We'd love to hear from you.